Hey, Tyler, Edmo Garage. So what we're going to do today, a little project, a couple hours. Going to change the valve stem seals out on this 1.8 G60. So what's happening is when we get to a stop and then get on the gas, we're getting some blue smoke coming out. So we're hoping it's the valve stem seals. That's the indicator on that is the problem. And so what I'm going to do is prep the engine bay, and then I'll give you the steps on what we're planning on doing. One thing I will do is we're obviously going to take the stress bar off, and take the intake tube off, take the breather off. ISV is going to come out. Obviously valve cover is going to come off. The whole rest of the motor is really going to stay in place. We'll move some hoses and vacuum hoses up and over, and obviously the spark plugs are going to come out. And you really don't need a whole lot of tools here. You need one specialty tool, which is the valve stem. It's the seat to get the springs to come down. So the extractor, I've got a link on one we used here, and it's pretty good. It actually works perfect for this. We've used it on one other project, as you'll see. And so anyway, I'm going to prep this bay, and then I'll hop in here as needed for the important items on this. Okay, so this is about 10 minutes worth of work. So what we've done here, obviously valve covers off, intake tubes off, ISV off, put this towel over to protect the intake plenum, and then spark plugs are all out. And so next step here is going to be to carefully pull off our valve cover gasket. So this is a new gasket, so we'll definitely be able to reuse it. And then our final steps will be to take and do top dead center on the motor, and I'll show you how we do that. And then from there, I'm going to give you our steps on pulling this out. The other thing I wanted to show you, go over to the shop here, is this is the Amazon kit that we're using. So it's a pretty neat little kit. So it's got two little kind of towers, the center bar, and then the orange red handle is how we do the extractor. This is actually where my thumb's at, is the tool we use on the Volkswagen. It fits perfect. It's got the openings there for the magnet to pull the little valve stem cleats out. And then from there we'll get the new seals in, and I'll do it step by step on that, and I'll show you also how we're keeping the valves from dropping in without using compressed air. Okay, I'm going to try to film and show you how we do the top dead center on this motor. Basically got a 19 millimeter socket. You see I've got a socket, or excuse me, a screwdriver here in this port. And so if I turn this, so you'll see that screwdriver went up. And then what we want to do is just find it when it starts to hit the downstroke. So it's still going up. Still going up. Okay, so that is basically our top. Now I can kind of cheat here because there's some marks on this from before. So what I'm going to do is show you those previous marks. So what I've got here, some mark there, got a mark on our timing chain gear sprocket, and then I've got a mark here that's maybe even from the factory that goes between the valve cover head and that, and then I've even marked one over here with a Sharpie. And then what I also do, because we're going to end up pulling the belt, loosen the tension and pull the belt off to get the cam out, is I put a mark actually on the belt and the tooth here to line that back up so I don't skip a tooth or do anything when I'm reinstalling it. So I'm going to mark here, here to here, here to here, here to here, everything to be safe. I've confirmed I'm top dead center on my number one here, and so good to go to start pulling this stuff apart. And then what I end up doing on this is, obviously your cam's going away, so you have no way to turn the motor over. I take a 6 millimeter extension with my longer handle here, and I can actually turn the water pump pulley, or excuse me, the alternator slash water pump pulley down there on the belt, and that'll turn the whole motor freely. So I'll peek in there with the camera. I'm not speaking the right pulley that I'm talking about, but you guys understand that I'm using the pulley below with just a 6 millimeter to turn the engine over to get these top dead center, and I'll explain that more. Okay, a quick jaunt in here with the filming. So obviously cam's out. See all the lifters? So those are all going to come out individually. I like to keep them in order. So 1, 2, 3 through 8. And then we're going to get in here and mount our towers. So I'll show that part of the video next. And that's the part you're going to want to get off Amazon if you don't have one, or if you already have a valve extractor, maybe a specialty one. You'll do that. We're still in top dead center. And then I'm going to hop over to the shop here. So I like to keep things in order. So through there, and then now that you can get some light in here, you can see my marks here to keep everything nice and symmetrical. So when this thing's up, matches everything there. And so I'm going to jump in and get the towers going, and then I'll come back and film that part also and show you how we extract these valve springs. Okay, so now what I'm going to show you is how I got the towers mounted in here, and I've got the lifters pulled out, and I'll show you the top of the valve springs and the seats. So what I've done here on this tower, again, this is that Amazon kit. You can buy this kit from Harbor Freight probably too. And then I've got shorty 15mm and 14mm socket. I'm using the 13mm that was holding the cam bracket in. And then the bar will come across like this. And then our retainer pulls these down, which pushes that down. I'll show you that step next. But we have one step here where we need to pull our top dead center down. What we're going to do is push some wire or some string down in there. I use a really flexible speaker wire because that's the industry I'm in, and that keeps the valves from falling down. And you can test that they're not going to fall down as you lift this, as you retain the spring down. You can kind of confirm that those valves aren't going to fall. And then also as you're lifting the motor up onto top dead center on each cylinder, you can kind of tell that it's going to bind up. So that's our next step, and I'll show you how I'm doing that. So the wire I'm actually using is right here. So just a really thin 16 gauge speaker wire, and then what I do is I slide this down the hole. It'll kind of coil up, and then as I lift it back into top dead center, it keeps the valves from falling down. What I found with air, I've done one of the job like this on a higher end motor with air, you can lose air pressure and then your valves drop and you're screwed. So that's the step, that's the bar. So it's a pretty neat little setup. It actually works out really well, and then you can actually slide this out of the way, which is nice too if you're doing a Volkswagen at least. All right, I'll do the next steps here and keep going. One other quick thing I wanted to note is with the valve lifters here on the cams, I put those all in order. So everything so far is in order. And I probably have some of the terminology wrong. It's very early in the morning while I'm doing this project because I started on it last night and didn't like some of the stuff I was doing, so I'm kind of redoing a few things. Okay, so this might be pretty hard to film, but got a flashlight under here. Let's see what I can do. So I got long 3/8 ratchet. I got a 6mm socket. And then if I sneak in here, hopefully I can film it. You can see that if I get onto this pulley right here with my 6mm, that lets me turn the whole motor super freely. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to be careful my orientation, but I'm going to come down about a full turn. Probably enough there, and then I'll hop up here. And so what I've got now, if you remember the first part of this, I've got this long screwdriver much farther down now, and then what I'm gonna end up doing, and I'm gonna get my work gloves on here when I start going on that again, I'm gonna push this flexible wire down into the hole here. And so when I come back up on that same stroke, it's gonna keep the valves in place. So you can see when I push it down here, it'll just start coiling up inside of the cylinder, and then when you come up, you can't drop the valves. So that's my trick to doing it, and you have to do it on each one. So I'm going to start with number 1. I'll do my 1 and 2 valves, so I'm going to do my intake and exhaust, and then I'm going to jump into 2, intake exhaust, 3, intake exhaust, 4, intake exhaust, so on. So work myself across. So really the only thing I'm going to film next is I'll show you this thing installed. You see the wire be shorter obviously, and then I'll show you how my spring retainer and remover works, and then I'll show you how we're doing that and how we're pulling it out. And then obviously reassemble I probably will not show, but we're getting to the point where we've almost to our valve stem seals already, and I'd say we're 30 minutes into this at the most. Okay, so about another 2 minutes into it, I've got, you can see this is no joke, I've put about half of this 6-foot chunk in there. I've pulled it back up to top dead center, so now my valves can't drop. And then I'm going to give you, this can be hard to do and film at the same time, but what I'm going to show you is, hopefully show you, is kind of how this works. So I'm going to drop our tool in here. You can see that it rests right there. And so try to get in here the best I can. It's kind of hard to film, but you can see I've got my part here. that there, I've got opening, and so as you push this down, and you'll see that the collets are kind of keeping the valve from holding. So our next step is to kind of come through and tap those down. You can see that's about as far as I can push, and see how it's loose now because it's hitting that string. And now my collets to hold the valve stem seats in are loose, and that's where you get the magnet in. So my next step is going to be to push these all the way down, grab the magnet, those split in half, pull each left and right out, and then I'll film the next step, which is pulling out the valve stem seat and seal, and we'll go from there. Okay, so jumping back in here for another time. I'm maybe 40 minutes into this total. So you can see I've got the spring retainer off. The valve has not dropped, as you can see. And then what we will end up doing is we'll take this and we'll pull our spring out, and I'll use probably a different hook than that. I don't know why I grabbed that one. We'll pull the spring out, and then I'm going to show you the old and new valve stem, and then you got to pop those valve stem seals back in, and then rinse and repeat through. So we're almost to the point where we're pulling this old one out, and we're going to put the new one in. So that'll be my next step. Then I'll show you how we put it kind of back together, and then the rest is all you guys. I'm not going to show you how to re-put everything you just did back apart. So, and then these are the little retainer springs, if you can see them. And they do have a wedge shape to them. So the wedge goes down, the tamper goes down. Show you two things here. So valve springs, so inner and outer retainer clips for the valve. And then shoot over to the shop here. And so this guy here, this clamps on to the top of the valve stem seal, and then you literally spin it, pull it up, and then you're going to put your new one back on. Just do one at a time. Don't try to do obviously two at a time, just do one at a time. And then that's going to replace that, and then I'll show you the step of putting that back in. But we've almost got our reverse valve stem seal replaced already. Alright, so jumping back in here again. It's hard to film by yourself, but new, old. I don't know if you can see it in the picture, but this is probably good for me because it might stop the smoke, but it does appear that this has a much smaller diameter. These are both 8mm, and then you can see the seal inside. So I've lubed some oil up in there to put it back on. And then you can see the old one, you can actually see basically metal. I'm not seeing much of the rubber up higher. Now that may just be the device, but it may not be. So hopefully this fixes our smoke issue. So that goes on top. You push that down with the tool, and then you reassemble this. So I'm going to show you this last step, and then you're off to the races. Give it a try at home. Okay, so I'm prepping to get these valve stem seals back in. I wanted to show you this part of the tool. So little adapter to drop it in. You can see it fits right on there. So that'll allow us to pound it down in there, and then it's got a little adapter. You can just kind of actually slide hammer that, or take a rubber mallet and just pop it into place. You'll need to do that on all of them. Just make sure they seat down. You should hear a noise when these clip down better. So, and that was the first mistake that I've done when I did one of these before, is that I didn't actually get these to seat as much, and I don't think it fixed the problem. So we're going to start seating this one. I'm going to show you the reassemble again, and that's it. Okay, so I assumed I should film this. So kind of look in there, you can see our new valve stem seal. And then what we're going to end up doing is taking this tool, get it on there nice and smooth, and you're going to pop that sucker right down on there, give it a few taps, call it a day. Okay, so last step, we've put our stem seals in. We've got our spring, our retainer, and our little collets back on. And then what we're going to end up doing is taking our same tool. So we're going to take this same tool, we're going to push down, and this is where it gets a little tricky. I've come to find out if we just take a little pick, spring those down and kind of wobble them around, you'll see them get into place, and then kind of lift it up and down. They pop into place, but you might work a minute or two on each one of those, or you might have one fall right into place. And then we're just going to work our way across. Again, we do 1 and 2, then we have to stop our whole procedure, take our string back out, move it up into here. You could skip if you wanted to make sure you didn't get too far crazy here with the crank turns. You could skip over to number 4, but I just work in an order. And this one here's got a new one. We'll just work our way across, and hopefully we've solved our little bit of smoke issue, and we're still going to replace the motor in here, but at this point maybe we can get some summer driving in and go from there. So I'll show you this thing locked back in place, and then I think that'll probably conclude the video. Okay, so last update to the video. Got my first stem seal in, springs back in, retainers back in. That one's good to go, 100%. It's locked in. See, the retainer can't come out, the collets are in. It took about 2.5-3 minutes to get that in. Maybe the time lapse will tell me exact. And I'm just going to wrap it up here. I'll let the time lapse kind of just film me doing the whole rest of this procedure, but I'm not going to show you how I'm putting all this back together. It doesn't make any sense. And go from there. Thanks for watching.